Our next topic is animated sprites, and I'm going to jump ahead here and show you how to import a finished animated sprite, and then I'll back up and show you how to make one. But the reason I want to show you how to import it is it might make you pay a little bit more attention to detail after seeing this. So here's how you import a sprite. You don't actually go to images and click on this button like you would for a static image. In order to bring up the options that you need, you have to go to File and then Import Sprite Sheet. Once you do that, you have to go find your sprite sheet. And notice that the sprite sheet is saved as a PNG file, not as a GIF. PNG is another web-based format that supports transparency. Now what happens is you get this dialog box here, and you may want to decrease the magnification rate here so you can see a little bit better what's going on. In fact, it does really help to be able to see the whole entire thing. And you can put your mouse in here and move around left or right to show you what's going on a little bit better. Now, the first thing that you want to do is set it up to the right amount of rows and columns. So in our case, we have 2 rows here and 4 columns. So let's go ahead and change that, and you'll get a visual up here of what's happening. So that's a lot closer right now. 2 rows, 2 columns. Also, for whatever reason, they have a certain amount of pixels put into all these trimming options. But if you make your sprite real accurate, you don't have to trim it or put any padding in it. So we want to set these all to 0. The other thing here is the animation duration. So the lower this number is, the faster the animation is going to go, and the higher the number is, the faster it's going to go. Unfortunately, when you preview it, it brings it back to full size, so it's a little bit hard to tell. But again, you can put your mouse over here and scroll up and down, and maybe by looking at a certain part of it, like in my case, the feet, we can get a better idea. So that's what it is at 1/3 of a second, or 0.33. But if I stop this, and then I go up here and let me double that approximately and then preview it again, you can see it makes a big difference in the speed. So I'm going to go a little happy medium to that, maybe kick that back to about a 1/2 second-ish. Okay, that's pretty much all you need to be concerned about in here. Then you just click on import. But one of the reasons that I showed you this early on is that we need every single one of these frames to be the exact same size, and this image that we have in here to be positioned the exact same size. So where in the GIF we had everything right behind each other, here we have to distribute them out across one sheet, thus the name Animated Sprite Sheets. And then we just click Import, and then it will be here under Images. Okay, so here I am in Photoshop. I have my PSD file opened up that has all the different layers of this animation, and here it is with the timeline. If any of this doesn't seem familiar to you, go back and watch the videos on making an animated GIF, and just don't go to the final step of creating the GIF. You want to work right here in Photoshop. Now, this is a great environment to set this up because, as we talked about in the GIF videos, we can move we can see all the layers at the same time. We can move the object itself that we're animating up or down, left or right, to get, the head bob or whatever it is exactly right. So it really does help to test it doing this. And so only when you're absolutely sure that you have everything right do you want to go on to the next steps of making the animated or making the sprite sheet. Now, a couple things to keep in mind is you want to have enough pixels here to work with on your character. So when you're first making your image in Photoshop, when you're setting up the file new, you want to make sure that you probably have at least like 400 pixels worth of information in each direction. What I ended up with if you go to image size, mine is about 519 wide by 754 tall. So that's plenty big. When we shrink it down inside of our environment, we're not going to have any pixelization. Where if you do the opposite, if you only made this thing like 100 pixels by 100 pixels and you want to use it at a bigger size, it's going to look very pixelated. Okay, so our first step towards changing this PSD from a single frame at a time into a sprite sheet that's going to have rows and columns is to first find out how big this is, and then what we need to do is add to our canvas. So we need another spot here for the image, another spot here, another spot here, and then maybe a row of 4 at the bottom. So first step is to go to image size, write down how big your height and width is in pixels. So the width is always given first, so 519 by 754. Then, and I wrote this down so that it might make a little more sense if you see it in print here. Then you want to figure out how many rows and columns you'll need. Best to keep the sprite compact, so in general not just one long row. So I don't want to go just one row with 8 columns. It's better for me to go, in this case with 8, 2 rows of 4. And just as an example, if you had 9 frames, you could do 3 rows and 3 columns. If you have, let's say 7, now there's no way to do even number with that. So again, you might want to go with 2 rows of 4, and then you'll just have 1 blank there. And we'll talk about how to deal with that inside of Edge Animate. So what I need to do then is grow my canvas out. I need to multiply the width by 4, since I'm going with 4 total columns, and I need to multiply the height by 2. So in my case here, going with 4 columns, 4 times 519 means I need to make my canvas 276 pixels wide by 2 times 754, which is 1508 pixels tall. Your numbers, of course, will vary. You just got to get the theory of that down. So how do you make a canvas bigger in Photoshop? Well, I'm going to cancel out of here. I'm going to go to Image, and under here I go to Canvas Size. Now you have to tell the program in relationship to what do you want to add. And in our case, we want this first image that's showing, image number 1, to be right here at the top left. So everything that we add, we want to go in this direction. And then we're going to tell it how big it's going to go. So we want to uncheck relative if it's checked, because relative you only check when you know what you want to add. Like if I knew I just wanted to add 2 pixels this way and 2 pixels that way, that's fine. But when I know what I want the final size to be, that's when I uncheck relative. So I'm going to change 519 to this number here. And I'm going to change the 254, or the 754, to this number. And then when I click OK, we should see, and I'm going to command minus, that we've added a lot to our canvas now. So now we have the room to put all these other images in here. And what we want to do is make sure now that it is image number 1 that is turned on there, and nothing else for now. Now there's a couple ways that we can distribute these other layers, which just so happen to be right on top of the other ones, because that was the nature of the testing and making a GIF. But this is probably the more intuitive way, is if we go to View and we go to New Guide Layout, and we select 4 columns, 2 rows, because that's what we're after. It's going to make these for us. So we just click OK, and now this thing is divided in 8. Now you may have a real difficult time. In fact, I'm having a difficult time seeing these. against this transparent background. But it doesn't really matter too much. What really matters is that it's able to help us make a selection here. So what I want to do is grab this rectangular marquee and go right from this corner down to this corner here, and it should snap into place once I get close, and we should recognize those numbers that are there as well. If it's not snapping for you, go up to View and turn Snap On and Snap To, and make sure that Guides is one of the items that's selected there. Now once you have that selection, you're just simply going to come back with the selection tool, click and drag, and because you made that whole entire selection of that same size, when you get over here you're going to feel it snap into place. We're going to do similar with the third layer, having just it turned on. Going to make a selection, and those of you who know a lot of different Photoshop tricks, you could make a way of saving this selection, but I'm not going to get into that since we're only really doing it a couple times in this class. Same thing here though, we want to get to where it snaps into place. Release the mouse, and then we'll move on, do that for the remaining layers. So now at this point, if I turn on all of those layers, we can see we now have all of the items that will be necessary for the sprite sheet. That seems like a bit of work, and there are actually scripts made that you can download. You probably even find some free ones that you can just download into Photoshop, and they usually come with instructions on how to do it. And then it would become one of these things where you have scripts, and you can see like there's already some that they have built in, but it would be another one that would show up here, and it would probably be like convert to sprite sheet, and it would, you know, probably do all the math and everything for you. But it's still kind of good to know what you're doing here, so that's why I'm showing you this. Now probably a smart thing to do would either have been when you first started on this, or at least now, do a file save as and give it a different name so that you have the one that you could go back to for GIFs where everything's stacked on top of each other, and this one here where everything is spread out for a sprite sheet. Now what you're going to have to do here is flatten this image, so that was good that we just saved that, and because we can go back to it not flattened if there is a problem and we need to move something. It might be easier with them on layers, but we'll select all the layers and then we'll go to merge layers, and so now everything is on one layer, and now we should be able to just go up here and do a save, do a file, save for web. Now keep in mind, if you're on, and which I'm going to download right now, the newest version, it's no longer file save for web, it's file export, and then there's a choice in there that says save for web legacy or something like that. But anyway, once you get there, you'll go in here. This time you want to make sure that you have PNG, and you may as well go with the 24. It's the best quality. Unless you have a real reason where size is a big deal. Otherwise, go with ping 24. Make sure that transparency is checked, and then go ahead and click save and give it a name that makes sense. Place where it makes sense. So now our image is saved out as a sprite and as a PNG file. And before we import this, I just wanted to show you something. Here is a GIF, and then here is one of the PNGs that I made. And notice on the GIF you have that white haloing effect, which is pretty difficult to get rid of. You can give it kind of another halo-ish effect or a color, but it's still harder to match with backgrounds where the ping is really nice hard edge on it. So then the last step would be to go back to what I did at the beginning of this video, but I'm going to make another video that's just dedicated to importing the graphics and working with them once they're inside, and that will be next.